Well, welcome to, is it week 4 or week 5? Week 5. Welcome to week 5. I can't count beyond about 2. Resource management. Today we're going to look at the lecture which relates to the second half of one of your 2 technical questions. And next week we're going to look at the second half of the other technical question. And if you remember, on your in-class test there are 4 questions, 2 technical and 2 about people, and you have to answer any 3. So you could do both of the questions from this week and next week, or at least one of them, and then 2 essay questions. But that will be your choice. And what you need to do over this week and next week is look at both of these techniques because they're both important for managing our projects. And that's the section we're moving into now. We've moved away from your basic skill set as a project manager. That was weeks 1 to 4. We've done that now. And now we're moving into managing your projects in weeks 5 to 8. And then in weeks 9 to 11, we'll look at the soft side, the people side of project management. And that gives us the overview that will enable us to take the professional exams and do well in them when we're ready. So what are we going to look at today? Well, we're going to look at 3 things. Resolving resource conflicts, imbalances in demand and supply of your resources, and also the question that nobody ever asks, in large projects, what level of resources do you need? And if you think about that, that's not an easy question to answer, but we'll think about it later in the lecture today. So that's what we're doing. Now I'm going to start with a little joke. Funny, not funny? And this is the project manager in front of the project board, and the project board is saying spend twice as much because the thing's going wrong. Because they don't want to be embarrassed by saying they'll cancel the project. They want somebody else above them to cancel it. And that goes on, of course. So ha ha ha, but that's about projects, and ours is going to be slightly different from that, I'm sure. Right. Resolving clashes. Now, we draw up a task list and get a resource list and put the 2 together. And when that happens, you have an overall project plan. We've seen that in the first 4 weeks. We've had overall project plans. And what we're going to do now is in a larger project, when we do that, we'll probably find some imbalances in supply and demand of resources. In particular, in some places, we may find we're trying to use more resources than we've got. And we need to know how we resolve that, and we're going to show you it with a simple example. And actually this simple example also illustrates how you're going to start part A of your coursework, which I've now published and is available in the WebLearn site for you to have a look at, and we'll follow that up in the seminars this week and next Friday morning. But here's a simple project, A, B, C, D, and D is preceded by A, and therefore the critical path is AD and the duration will be 10 days. It'll be easy to think of what that project looks like in Microsoft Project. And what we're going to do is recommend, and you need to do this for your coursework, these settings. And I recommend you'd use them from now on in the classes. First of all, choose this, automatic and level only within available Slack. So that's something you've got to do. It's actually manual, and some of these have got ticks in them which make very little sense. So if you download the software or have it at work or anywhere else, you need to check that these settings are the ones that apply, or you're going to find your coursework becomes a bit of a muddle. So please, as beginners, use automatic. Eventually you might prefer manual, but certainly don't let the computer do some of these things down here which normally have ticks in them because they're dangerous. I don't want the computer deciding to change the allocation of resources in my tasks. I don't want it to split tasks for me. They're difficult to manage and unpopular that way. So we will simply use level only within available Slack. So that's the first thing. Under resource leveling options, make sure it looks like this and click OK. But we also want you to set and to show a baseline. So those 2 together go project, set baseline, OK, yes. And then format baseline last saved on the date you're on today, and then you will see something slightly different. And if you get it right, this is what you'll see. What's different about that then? What's new today? Yeah, we've got 2 bars for every bar, haven't we? We've got these grey bars at the bottom, which you haven't seen before. And they're called the baseline. And we'll be using the baseline when we talk about tracking our projects. But we're going to use it today to spot clashes and how they're resolved. So let's see how that can work. So here's my simple project, A, B, C, D, and notice that D follows A, and at the moment there are no resources on any tasks. We're about to remedy that. And we're going to say, this project needs an electrician. Well, actually looking at it now, if every task needed an electrician, how many electricians would it need? 3 at the moment. 3 for the first 3 days, because it would need 1 for A, 1 for B, and 1 for C. So you'd need 3 for those 2 days, then you'd need 2, and then you'd need 1. So we need at least 3 electricians to do this project. Well, do we? Well, of course not. We can delay some of the tasks using available slack. So for instance, if I was to move this one forward, how many would I need now? Only 2, without making the project longer. And that's a key thing that we're going to want to think about today and in your coursework. So we're going to add an electrician to task A, and then we're going to add an electrician to task B. And when we do that, this is what you'll see. Because we've got the settings on automatic, can you see the difference? That blue bar used to be there, and now it's moved forward. And it might look to you as though it's got longer. Has it got longer? No, because of Saturday and Sunday. It's actually the same length still, but it's certainly moved forward. And because I've got an electrician there and it's critical, and an electrician there and it's not critical, project has quite logically moved this one forward so it no longer overlaps with that one, and now I have a feasible project plan with only 1 electrician. Fine, that's all right. But now what do you think will happen when I add the electrician to task C? Shall we see? Let's see. It will be an error, yes. And what will happen, we'll first of all go project set, and I want you to do this in the coursework as well. Project set baseline, OK. And that will put that grey bar back with the blue bar. So when we see the next clash, we'll be able to see it more easily. And it will be evidence of only that clash and not the first clash and the second clash. So in your coursework, every time you've got a clash, set the baseline when you've captured the evidence. OK, now we're going to add the electrician to task C. And when we do that, you will get this error message, which you'll become familiar with through time. The famous skip all stop message. And that means project cannot resolve the overallocation of the resources to your tasks. It even tells you when it can't resolve it on. But let's have a look at what it looks like. And obviously there are 3 options. I suggest you go for skip all or stop. I can't actually tell the difference between skip all and stop. If anybody ever finds out what it is, let me know. But if you press skip all, this is what you'll see. Bang. What's new on that diagram? Some of you have seen them. The little red people. The little red people. Red. Is red a safe colour or a dangerous colour around the world? Red means danger. And red means danger here. And project is quite clever at this sort of thing. It's tried its best to solve this problem, but it can't solve it without making the project longer. So it does its best, and it shuffles things around a little bit, but there's somewhere where the thing cannot be solved. Where is it now, where it's going wrong? Yeah, B and C, and in fact it's here, isn't it, on this Wednesday? Yeah, where it's still got these 2 overlapping. It's moved that one as far forward as it can, but it can't move it any further because that will make the project longer. And in more recent versions of Microsoft Project, it won't do that for you automatically. And I think that's reasonable. You don't really want a computer telling you your projects are going to be longer. If that's going to happen, it has to be a decision that we take as project managers. Agreed? All right, so we have a problem here which is not yet solved. The skip all stop told us the problem is not yet solved. So let's see. It's easy here to see where the clash was because we've got the little red people. But on a larger project, it gets much more complicated. Now this slide just simply tells you how to clear any levelling that's going on if you ever need to. And this is also on the resource sheet. You'd find that the name electrician is in red because we haven't got enough electricians now. We've only got one and we're trying to use 2 on that Wednesday. So the red is all over the place. You've got the red people there. The electrician will be red on your resource sheet. This indicates we've got a problem. And in a larger project, it will be quite difficult to find where the clashes are. But if you follow these instructions on this slide, you will see this image here with a split screen. And in the bottom half, you've got a nice little graph showing you how many electricians you're using. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then suddenly 2. And notice that one is in red. Why is it in red? We've only got 1. That's where the clash is. And the advantage of this view is now you look for the red people, you look for the red bar, and where they intersect is where your problem is located. So on a project with thousands of tasks and hundreds of resources, where 20 resources were clashing and there were 400 red people, now you can narrow down and find out what's happening and begin to solve it one problem at a time. But certainly that little diagram there is very powerful and will help us a lot if we want to take a manual approach. Okay, and how will we get rid of these remaining clash, or this remaining clash? Well, we've actually got 3 choices. I could link A to B and then C. So the electrician will do task A, then do task B, then do task C. That's logical. And we probably put them in that order because we thought that's the order they should be done in. So though we didn't need to originally, we can now put in some links between A, B and C simply because each one is done by an electrician. Whereas before we didn't need the links because we were going to use more electricians. But now we could put the links between A, B and C. Alternatively, we could drag this one forward a day so it doesn't overlap that one. The project will be a day longer, but you won't have that clash anymore. Or you could drag C forward and B would drop back. But both of those would put a constraint on the tasks B or C. So it's probably better and perhaps more logical to make the links that didn't used to exist between A and B and C. So the electrician simply does them one after the other. What you'll then see, and I've shown it to you here, is if we do link A to B to C, so now there's arrows going from A to B and one from there to there. So I've just gone from that one and dragged down to that one and dropped, gone from that one down to that one and dropped. And now you can see no red people, no problem, but the project is not 10 days long now, it's 11 days long. But it's feasible with just one electrician. Okay, well now the fun starts. What do you think I'm going to do next? The electrician on task D. Yeah, maybe the electrician needs to do task D as well. What will happen? Well, if you do that, you will find that message skip, skip or stop. And it will move the blue one forward, but of course it won't fit, will it? It will come to there and stop. And project will throw its hands up in horror and say skip, skip or stop. And then you'd have to think about how you solve that problem. But you can probably think about how you'd solve it. If we really have to have an electrician doing this one, then this one, what would they have to do next? This one. So make a link from there to there, and then the electrician just does them one after the other. And the project is now 7, 10, 7, 11, 17 days long. So instead of a project which was 10 days long, which could have needed 3 electricians, we've ended up on one 17 days long, which only needs 1 electrician. But of course that begs the question, I'm hoping you're already thinking ahead of me, why do we have to use only 1 electrician?
Cost-wise.
Maybe we've only got 1 electrician, maybe it's cost-wise, but also, what would happen if we tried to use 2? Now, of course, if we started using 2 electricians, instead of this taking 4 days with 1 electrician, what could you do instead? 2 days with 2 electricians. And you could juggle about some of these other things and come up with a plan which, instead of using only 1 electrician, uses 2. electrogens. And if you did that, and you can try it later on, I came up with that solution, which is actually 9 days long with 2 electrogens. So it's slightly shorter than the original project, which needed 3 electrogens, but it only needs 2 electrogens. But you could also simply take this diagram here, when you've got D going after C, and half them all by putting 2 electrogens on each. Now I actually think that's a relatively clumsy solution, but it would only be 8.5 days long. So there's one at 9 days long. This one, if you had 2 electrogens on every task and half their durations, would be 8.5 days long. Now I say it's an ugly solution because not all project managers believe if one person takes 4 days to do it, 2 people will take 2 days. Some believe it, and in some projects it's true. But most project managers are slightly dubious of that assumption. Though of course we can see the logic behind it. Okay? So I might prefer this one where I've doubled them up twice, in effect, rather than this one where I've doubled them up everywhere. But that would be your understanding of your project. Good. Now then there's a little exercise to try at the back, which talks about having 2 tuples and what you do, and that slide sort of runs you through what you'll do, and you can try that one as well when you get in the seminar rooms. And then what we're going to look at now is how you're going to demonstrate your understanding of the theory of this on your in-class test. And you remember in week 2 we did the forward and backward pass. Do you remember that? Yeah. And if there's a choice, pick the biggest on a forward pass. If there's a choice, pick the smallest on a backward pass. And this was the example we used when we taught you how to do that. And there it is, there's the little sketch, and you see, for instance, I can't start before A, B and C are finished, so there's an arrow from A, arrow from B, arrow from C, and there's I. G can't start till F and E have finished, so it goes further across than they do, and you've got the arrows going in there. Do you remember that? So that little sketch is used to produce the bigger diagram with 6 boxes in each. And just to run you through what happens briefly, we first of all put A5, D1, F3. That simply comes from how long the durations is, A5, D1, F3. So I'm entering the duration of each task onto the diagram. And then I put the noughts on all the tasks that have got nothing coming before them. And for instance, 0 and 5 is 5, 5 and 1 is 6, 6 and 3 is 9. And then I can't do that one yet because I can get there in 2 different ways. So do I pick 8 or do I pick 9? I pick 9. It's a forward pass, I pick the biggest. Then 9 and 3 is 12, finished. And then if you do that with the others as well, the end points are this one, and this one. So does our project take 9 days, 17 days, or 12 days?
17.
Yes, and therefore we've got to put the 17 there. But we also put it there and there. Because although at the moment this one finishes at day 12, if it was delayed up to day 17, then it would delay the project. And the difference between these 2 numbers is called the float or the slack. Okay, and that's your freedom of movement. And we're going to be using that to save electrogens. That's the advantage of that slack. We can use it to reduce the number of electrogens we need to run the project. All right, so now my job is, this is what we did in week 2. And we did this diagram, and hopefully you've practiced that enough to be able to do it on an in-class test. And that's the first part of the first technical question and the second technical question. Now, we do something else with it beyond that point. And what we will do is produce this diagram here. Ignore that one there, I'm going to refer to that in a minute. This diagram here, let's concentrate on that first, and then we'll concentrate on the loading chart at the bottom. Now the one at the top, all I've done is assume that every task will start at the earliest event time. And looking at this chart, that means H will start at day 5 because the earliest start time is day 5. It will last 12 and finish at 17. So let's look at this chart. There's H. It starts at 5, lasts 12 and finishes at 17. And let's take another one. Let's take D. Starts at day 5, lasts a day and finishes at day 6. So let's find D. There's D, starts at day 5, lasts a day and finishes at day 6. So they're all shown at their earliest event times using the numbers on this chart. So you'll find F goes from 6 to 9, G goes from 9 to 12, Let's just see if G goes from 9 to 12. There it is, starting at 9 and going to 12. So they're all linked and they're all on their earliest times. Now I've used the convention that the textbooks tend to use, which is to put the critical path at the bottom and then put the others up above it, and it doesn't matter where they go up and down, it only really matters where they go left and right. But at the moment I've put them sort of logically together because B and C are down here underneath the critical path. B, C and I are sort of down here underneath the critical path, which is AH, and then D, E, F and G are the four that go above the critical path. But that's not necessary. You don't have to group them like that. And project would just go A, B, C, D straight down the board. So that's the top half of the diagram. Put every task on the middle two numbers. H is 5 to 17, I is 5 to 9, F is 6 to 9, and so on. Anywhere you like, up and down, but they must be in the right position, left and right. Good. Now, how do we get the loading chart? Well, we've made the assumption that each of these tasks needs one electrician, for example, or one manager or something. And if that's true, on day one, how many tasks are happening? Yeah, A, B and C. And therefore, on day one, we need an electrician to do task A, an electrician to do task B, and an electrician to do task C. Therefore, we need 3. And on day 2, we still need 3. But then what happens? Just 2, and then just 1. So we go from 3 to 2 to 1. And then suddenly, we've got H, I, D and E, right the way through to there, requiring 4 electricians. And then you can see it goes down a little bit. And finally, the only thing happening is H. So that simply counts every time you go to a number, point up there, see how many tasks are happening. H, I, F, E. That means 4 people, H, I, F, E, 4 people are needed at that point. And that's called our loading chart. Now actually this assumption about 1 person per task is not necessary. And project can deal quite easily if, for instance, C needs 2 people, B needs 3 people, and A needs 5 people. How would that change the chart down here? On day 1, how many would we need? 10. On day 2, 10. On day 3, 8. On day 4, 5. And so on. And that just means this chart would become higher. But the same principles will apply. But in our case, we're going to assume it's 1 person per task. And we'll do that for you on the in-class test as well. We won't make it any more complicated than that. Good. Now, that means, how many people do we need? How many electricians do we need for this project? 4. But for how long?
3 days.
Right. And suppose this project is in the middle of a rainforest 500 miles away from anywhere. You're going to have to send all the people there, probably in a helicopter, in 1 day, aren't you? Yeah. So, oh, is that me? Or is that somebody else? So, how long is that 4th electrician going to work for? You've sent them there for the whole period, but how long will they work for? 3 days. And the rest of the time, they've got off. Is that very efficient? Not, is it? So, can we shuffle things around in order to use fewer electricians?
Yes.
But of course, if this project was next door to us, just sending in 4 electricians on 1 day is no problem. All right, wake up in the morning, 4 electricians go off to that site there. Next day, 3 electricians go off to that site there. No problem. But if it's a project that's a long way away, or if we haven't got 4 electricians, or we don't plan to get them, then can we improve things, and can we level this out in some way by using available slack? And I think you see that we can. And that's why I've put this diagram up here, because when I'm moving things around, I must not break the links between the tasks. So for example, if I move D forward, what must I also move forward? F and G. And if I move E forward, I mustn't move it beyond G. And so on. So always double check the links when you move things around. In particular, H, I and G can go as far forward as you like because nothing comes after them. So I, which is currently here, could obviously be moved forward, couldn't it? And if you moved it forward just a little bit, just past this chunk here, would you need 4 people now? No. In fact, past this chunk here as well. And by moving I just beyond there, you'd be able to get away with having only 3 electricians. And would the project be any longer? No. But it would be better because instead of sending 4 electricians there, we're only sending 3. No cost, but fewer electricians required. No extension in the duration, but fewer electricians required. And this is vital. In London, I could show you half a dozen newspaper cuttings about the scarcity of skilled labour on projects across London. There are many, many giant projects going on at the moment, and everybody is short of skilled labour like plasters, electricians and so on. And that's true in other industries as well. And if we can run our projects with fewer people, with no cost, and without making them longer, we're quids in. We're going to be hired as project managers. Agree? Okay, well, still simply sticking to this, we're going to think about how we can lower these lumps. Let's look at this first one to start with. I've got B, C and A. Now, remember A, B and C, B must stop before H and I happen, A must stop before those 4 things happen. But what can I do about A, B and C? A can stay there. What would I do with B and C? I could move C forward, couldn't I? Think of it as a Lego brick. Just pick it up and move it forward a little bit to there. Does that work? Yeah.
Beyond H.
Yeah, because it must not go beyond I, actually. And I is here at the moment. So we can move C forward to there easily. And now, instead of 3, 2, 1, the whole of that lot would be just 2, wouldn't it? Got it? Or we could move B forward 2 days. And then it wouldn't overlap with C, and that's also okay because it must finish before H and I does. Well, it would, because there's H, there's I, so just move B forward 2 days, you're also okay. So the solution I'm going to show you now is not unique. There are lots of different possible solutions that would give you the same sort of answer. But you must never break the restrictions between the tasks. Now we turn our attention to this more difficult chunk of stuff here. Now we did say that I could be moved forward, and I could, if I wanted to, move it all the way forward to there. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 days back to there. But now what about these 4? D, E, F and G. Remember they all sort of link together, and we must not break the links here. They all follow after A, so they've all got to, they can't go backwards, they can only go forwards, which is true with all the tasks. Because they're already on their earliest start time, none of them can go backwards. But they can go forwards. So what would you do with D, E, F and G? Any suggestions?
You can move F forward a bit.
You could. Or E.
E forward.
Yeah. We could move D and F forward beyond E, or we could move E forward beyond D and F. I'm linking D and F together because of course they link together here, don't they? So let's keep them together. So we could move D and F forward beyond E, or E forward beyond D and F. But if we do that, what have we got to do with G? Whichever one we opt for, G would also have to move forward. Fine. So you see we've got choices, but what we're doing is things that are feasible. Now on the slideshow, I show you one solution where I did this. I moved C forward, not B. I moved E beyond D and F, not D and F beyond E. And I moved G beyond the E positioned E, and I moved E forward, I forward so far as possible to minimise the overlap. And this is what I've found. And again, that's not unique. Other solutions would be equally valid, as long as you don't break the links between the tasks. And now, how many electricians do I need?
3.
3, but for how long?
2 days.
Just 2 days. And of course that begs the question again, I'm begging the question twice today, I have to stop saying that. We could have a longer project with only 2, couldn't we?
Yeah.
How?
If we move H forward.
Move G forward.
Yeah, the simple solution, move I forward 2 days. And that will make the project 2 days longer, won't it? Yeah? And we're done. So instead of having 4 electricians, which we had originally, we could have 2 electricians with a project that's only 2 days longer. That's not bad. But in fact, there's an even better solution if you look carefully enough. And that solution would be this one. And somebody said move H forward. Actually, that works, because that makes a little gap for D. And then you can move these things around, and it's only 1 day longer. So we've got a 1 day longer project that only needs 2 electricians. That's pretty good, isn't it? And now we can send them off to the middle of the rainforest. Instead of 4 electricians in the helicopter, we've only got 2. And they're all working all the time. But that's part of the problem. How easy is this project to run now? How much slack have you got? Absolutely none. There is no slack anywhere. Everything has to go off exactly the way I've got it drawn here. If any one of these tasks gets delayed by a day, the whole project gets delayed by a day. Particularly because we've only got 2 electricians there anyway. All right? So it's not all good news. But it is certainly a potential improvement. And we wouldn't have to go all that way. We could have stopped there and just accepted that. And we'd have been okay and there'd still been some slack hanging around. Or any intermediate solution. Now, that is what we're expecting you to be able to do on your in-class test. But I would like to show you a bigger issue related to this and related to you being employable when you finish doing this module and making money, big money as a project manager and solving a problem which all companies are facing at the moment, cutting back on staff without increasing costs. Suppose you're running a large project. What level should you set the resources? It's actually quite a difficult thing if you think about it. For instance, at Westfield, the big shopping centre in West London, or in the centre of London, they had about 7,000 people working. In the final stages, 7,000 people a day. Why was it 7,000? Why wasn't it 8,000? And how many of them were electricians? And how many were shop fitters? And how many were plasterers? And who decided? And if it wasn't 7,000, but it was 8,000, what could they have done with the project completion date? Probably shortened it, yeah. So somebody, the project manager, is making a decision that there's 7,000 people there and aiming at that date. And if that changes, they'd have to get more people there and pull that date backwards a little bit. But how actually do they do it? And is it the same each day, each week, each month? How do people decide those sorts of things? And I've sort of cheated for you a bit because each time I give you a case study at the back, I'm telling you how many resources you've got. I won't be doing that for long. Soon you will be deciding how many resources you need on your projects. Not immediately, but soon. Now I want to show you how this works and how we fine-tune things. And I'm going to take an example of an actual project. My friend does this. He's an architect. He runs a firm of architects. And this is the preparation. I think I've shown you this before, haven't I? So let's pick up that. I'm actually going to break out of the slideshow and do the demonstration in project for you. And here we go. Here we've got all the tasks. There are quite a few of them. You can see there's quite a lot of tasks there, aren't there? About 80 tasks. And it all uses things like surveyors and architects and so on. And on the resource sheet, and there's no red people at the moment, on the resource sheet, view resource sheet, no red. So, have I made the right decision? Can you see I've got 8 architects, 4 managers, 4 surveyors, 4 labourers, and so on. You might not be able to read that from the back. But is that the right decision? Now, first of all, I'm going to check my levelling options. Resource, levelling options, and oh dear, look, they're all wrong. This is what you'll find yours are. So we set that to automatic, and we change this to level only within available slack. There aren't any manual tasks, so that one won't matter. You can get rid of it if you want. It really doesn't matter. And click OK. Is this the right decision? Well, watch. This currently says 800, and it's not in red, which means it's OK. But what happens if I lower it to 700?
Still okay.
Yeah, 600, 500. Stop me when there's a problem. Whoops. 400. Aha. So, how many architects did I need? 5. Not 8, which is what was on there in the first place, but only 5. And in doing that, no tasks have moved. And actually I can leave that like that. Now the manager currently says 4. I'm going to move it down to 3. I'm going to move it down to 2. I'm going to move it down to 1. Aha. So I needed 2 managers. And then the surveyor currently says 4. Well, I did need 4. The labourer says 4. I did need 4. The landscape gardener says 3, 2, 1. Okay, I needed 2 landscape gardeners. And so on. I'll do it for the interior designer as well. Why not? I'm nearly there now. And then it's overheads and things. I can leave them. 2, 1. Oh, And this raises an interesting point. I put that to 0. If it stayed black, what would that mean?
It means you need one.
I didn't need them at all.
Okay.
Yeah. So though it originally said I've got 3 interior designers, actually I only need 1. But if it stayed black, I wouldn't have needed any at all. Though I might have done at some point, I don't now. So even if you had 200 resources, different resources, you can go down the list and see what's happening. Okay? So now I know what my optimal level would be. It would be to increase all of these by 1. Now to reinforce this, I'm going to go back to the Gantt chart and just show you all the little red people now. Can you see them?
Yes.
Yes, but can you see also that no tasks have moved? That's important. No tasks have moved. They're still on their earliest start times. So I'm going to go back to my resource sheet and I'm simply going to raise them all to 5, to 2, to 4, to 4, to 2, and to 1. And now, no red people. And if I go back to my Gantt chart, no red people. And no tasks have moved. So for no cost and no extension in the project duration, I've now got a much more efficient allocation of resources. Yeah? But we don't stop there. We can do better than that. What about if we want to use some available slack? I'm going to go back to my resource sheet, and this is about architects. Just make sure I don't overrun. Yeah, I'm okay. This is about architects. Remember we had 8, and we cut it down to 5, without moving any tasks. But suppose we're prepared to do what we did in the first half of this lecture, and say let's have fewer architects than that. So let's reduce it down to 4, and it will go red, because there's a problem there. And then all I do is I go resource, level all. Bang. And project solved that problem by doing exactly what we did. It's moved something forward to use available slack. Well, I don't stop there. I'm going to be really cheeky and I'm going to move it down to 3. And it will go red. Now what am I going to do? Level all. Aha. We can even get away with only 3, not 8. And now I'm going to move it down to 2 because I'm still being cheeky. And remember, this isn't happening. This is just our plan on the computer. It's not actually happening in the real world yet. And I'm going to level all. And that's the key evidence we want to see in your coursework. That tells me, because that says architects is 2 and it says skip, skip, all, stop, what does that mean about how many architects I need? I need 3.
Yes.
1 more than that. And then I don't have a problem. Well, just to show you what's happened, I'm going to skip all here, and it's not solved, and it's still got the red person there, and I'm going to have a look at the Gantt chart. And look how busy project has been, doing what you would have done in the first half of the lecture, by hand. But it can't solve it. You can see all the red people still there. That's not a solution, is it? All right? So how do we get a solution? Well, I'm going to go back to my resource sheet, and as you spotted, that shouldn't be 2, it should be 3. And when it's 3, I'm then going to go resource level all. And now, no red people. Okay, and if I go back to my Gantt chart, everything looks fine, but again, you can still see how busy project has been, moving things around. But we didn't have to do it. Project did it. Genius. And now we've got a project which is feasible with not 8, not 5, but only 3 architects.
So we don't have to worry about the actual tasks? That we
Hopefully not. If we do, then we have to do it all manually and we have to think about it one at a time. But this is feasible with available slack.
And then thinking about the example, this move,
Yep.
whether or not
Yep.
I think you move that because it's not
Yep.
critical, or you shouldn't because...
I agree. So you might want to take the manual approach and solve it one thing at a time and keep control.
Okay.
If you've got time to do so. But it's all okay. It's nothing wrong. This is a feasible solution. Nothing much happens at the top. You can see everything's pretty much going off according to plan. But as we get further down, whoa, things become a bit more desperate. But it's feasible. It's done. Interesting? Okay, well in parts you'll be doing that in your coursework, not in so much detail, and we'll never expect you to explain what's gone on there and why it moved this blue one forward and stuff like that, but we do want you to understand that stuff about the clashes, and we do want you to see how this can be done on the computer, not just in theory on a bit of paper with a tiny project, but with a real project. This is something people are out there doing and making money with. Right, back to my PowerPoint slideshow, just to finish things off. Then these slides try to illustrate for you how that happens. There's using up the slack, there's the thing about skip, skip, all stop, there's the thing about 3 architects, there's the thing after you've done skip, skip, all stop, and there's the one after it's finished playing around. So those slides reproduce what you've just seen happening live. And then we simply make the point that by doing that we've used up quite a lot of available slack, and that will make the project harder to manage than it was before, but still hopefully feasible to manage. That's it. Now next week we're going to crash our projects, which sounds rather scary, but it doesn't actually mean anything dangerous. It just means make them shorter. Because obviously people come up to you and say, your project plan is 300 days long, okay, make it 250 days. Off you go. How do we do that? Well, that's going to be the topic of next week's lecture, and that's the second half of the second technical question. Okay, seminars will be going through what we did today, resource management. And I'll also brief you on the coursework. Thank you.